Hi everyone! Today, you will explore new words in English through the charming story of a young girl named Scout Finch, her brother Jam, and their father Atticus as they navigate life in a small southern town during a time of deep prejudice and injustice. Based on the classic novel To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, this tale delves into themes of innocence, bravery, and the importance of standing up for what is right, even when the world seems against you.
In the warm summer days in the town of Macomb, Alabama, life moved slowly and calmly. The people here had lived for so long that it seemed like time had stopped, and every house held the history of many generations. In this small southern town, surrounded by fragrant cotton fields and tall pine trees, my childhood days were spent with my older brother Jem and our father, Atticus Finch. My name was Jean Louise Finch, but everyone called me Scout. Atticus was not just our father. He was our example of honesty, wisdom, and bravery. My father, a tall and calm man with deep gray eyes, never raised his voice, but his words always mattered. My brother Jem, a skinny boy with messy brown hair, was my hero who always protected me from trouble, and when he couldn't, we knew that our father would be there. One summer, a new boy came into our small world, Dill. He was a boy with hair as white as snow and shining eyes, who came to stay with his Aunt Rachel. He quickly became a part of our games and adventures. Dill was a dreamer, a lover of stories and make-believe, but inside his small body, he had a big heart. The three of us wandered the streets of Macomb, creating stories and making plans to one day explore the house that both scared and fascinated us, the Radley house. The Radley house was dark and abandoned, surrounded by tall bushes, and every board on its porch creaked with the slightest movement. The people of Macomb said that Arthur Boo Radley lived there, a man who never left his home. In our imagination, he was a mysterious monster hiding in the shadows, but as I grew older, I began to understand that the truth was much more complicated. One fall, when the leaves turned golden, life in Macomb changed. A new case came to the town that shook everyone, the case of Tom Robinson. Tom was a black man accused of raping a white girl named Mayella Ewell. Her father, Bob Ewell, was known as one of the rudest and most ignorant people in town. They lived on the outskirts, in a shabby house surrounded by garbage, and their dogs barked at anyone who passed by. When my father decided to defend Tom Robinson, many people in Macomb did not understand his choice. In those days and in that place, defending a black man against the accusations of a white woman was seen as a challenge to the order of things. But Atticus, with his clear eyes and firm principles, could not ignore injustice. He knew the case was doomed to fail, but he still chose to fight for the truth.
Scout, there are things you will understand when you grow up.
My father told me one evening as I sat next to him on the porch. I didn't understand why so many people started to avoid us, but I looked into his serious eyes and felt proud of him. Dad, why do they hate you for defending Tom?
People are afraid of what they don't understand, but that doesn't mean we should do the same. We must stand up for the truth, even if everyone around us disagrees.
These words from my father always stayed in my mind, especially when we walked through the streets of town and people gave us disapproving looks. The trial of Tom Robinson became an event that everyone talked about. The court sessions were held on hot summer days when the air was so thick it seemed you could cut it with a knife. The courtroom was filled with people who came to watch this show. The white people sat in the front, and on the balcony, packed tightly together, were the black people. I sat with Jem and Dill among them, watching as our father stood before the judges and the jury, explaining that Tom Robinson could not have committed the crime he was accused of.
I ask you, gentlemen of the jury, to remember that Tom Robinson is just as human as you are. He is innocent because the evidence speaks for itself. But more importantly, his word, his honesty, which many of you have already rejected just because of the color of his skin.
These words sounded like a thunderclap, but the faces of the jury did not show any emotion. The whole town knew the outcome was already decided, but Father still fought until the end.
Scout, it would be a perfect world if people didn't judge each other by appearance.
Jem told me as we walked home after another court session.
But the reality is that Tom was already found guilty before he even walked into that room.
When the verdict was given and Tom was found guilty, my heart broke. I looked at my father, who stood tall and with a calm expression, and I realized that he knew how it would end. But his loss was not just personal, it was a victory of prejudice over truth, and that hurt him the most. Father did not give up and filed an appeal, but it was useless. Tom was sent to prison, where he waited for the sentence to be carried out. But before the appeal could be reviewed, we heard terrible news. Tom had been shot while trying to escape from prison. I couldn't believe what I heard. Tom was a strong, kind man who only wanted to protect his family and himself, but the system, full of hate and prejudice, destroyed him. Why, Dad? Why did they do it? I asked him one evening as we sat quietly on the porch.
They killed him because they couldn't admit they were wrong. Sometimes people are so afraid of the truth that they are willing to kill just to avoid facing it.
These words pierced my heart like a knife. I knew that life in Macomb would never be the same. After Tom Robinson's death, our house started to be attacked. Bob Ewell, a mean and cruel man, held a grudge against our father for exposing his lies in court. He began to harass our family, throwing insults and threats at us. This created an atmosphere of worry and fear, but Father remained calm and focused. He was sure that truth and justice would win in the end. But one night, as Jem and I were walking home through the woods, Bob Ewell attacked us. I remember how the darkness closed in around us, and I heard Jem scream as he fell to the ground, hit by a blow. At that moment, I felt completely helpless, but suddenly, someone appeared from the shadows and protected us. This person, whom I feared as a child, turned out to be our savior, Arthur Boo Radley. I saw how he, silently and effortlessly, pushed Bob Ewell away from us, and Jem and I were alive only because of his help. Later, Bob Ewell was found dead, and our father understood that sometimes the truth is more complicated than it seems. Boo Radley, whom we thought was strange and dangerous, turned out to be the one who wasn't afraid to protect innocent children from evil.
Scout, I want you to understand one thing.
My father said as we sat in the living room after that terrible night.
Not all people we think are bad are actually bad. And those who seem good may hide real evil inside. What matters is not what people say about them, but how they act.
These words from my father made me think about how I saw the world. I no longer looked at people through the lens of fear or prejudice. I learned to look deeper, to find the truth behind the outer appearance. After that night, I often thought about Boo Radley. He lived in the house across from us, behind a tall fence, hidden from the eyes of the world, and though I didn't see him again, I knew that he was there, watching over us like a guardian angel. He was, for me, a symbol of everything misunderstood, unfairly judged, but ultimately important and right. Since then, I changed. I no longer feared those who seemed strange or different to me. I learned to value people for who they really were, not for what others said about them. Atticus taught me the most important lesson: to be honest with myself and others, to protect the weak, and to fight for justice, even if it brings only pain. You know, Jem, I said to my brother one day as we sat on the porch watching the setting sun, I think Boo Radley isn't so scary after all. He's just different, but that doesn't make him bad.
You're right, Scout. We're all different, but that doesn't make us worse or better. The most important thing is to understand and respect others.
These words became a lifelong lesson for me. I understood that the world we lived in was full of injustice, prejudice, and fear. But it was in this world that I had to learn to stand up for the truth, no matter how hard it was. Atticus always said, "It's a sin to kill a mockingbird." This phrase seemed to have no direct meaning until I realized that the mockingbird was a symbol of innocence and kindness. Tom Robinson was a mockingbird, unfairly judged and killed. Boo Radley was a mockingbird, feared and despised, but who saved our lives. And perhaps my father, Atticus Finch, was also a mockingbird because he fought for the truth in a world that was blind to it. This story, full of pain, loss, and hard lessons, taught me to see the world as it is, but at the same time not to lose faith in goodness and justice. And though life in Maycomb was far from perfect, I knew that thanks to people like my father, this world became a little bit better.
Tomboyish describes a girl who enjoys activities and behaviors traditionally associated with boys. Example, a lively image of young Scout Finch, a tomboyish girl in overalls, playing with her brother Jem. Conviction means a firmly held belief or opinion, often with strong determination. Example, Atticus Finch, standing tall and resolute in a crowded courtroom, speaking with conviction as the townspeople listen intently. Prejudice means an unfair feeling of dislike for a person or group because of race, sex, religion. Example, but his loss was not just personal, it was a victory of prejudice over truth. Resentment means a feeling of anger or displeasure about someone or something unfair. Example, Bob Ewell, a mean and cruel man, held a grudge against our father for exposing his lies in court. Harass means to repeatedly attack, bother, or annoy someone. Example, Bob Ewell began to harass our family, throwing insults and threats at us. Savior means a person who saves someone or something from danger or difficulty. Example, Boo Radley, whom I feared as a child, turned out to be our savior. Doomed means certain to fail, suffer, or die, having a fate that is inescapable. Example, he knew the case was doomed to fail, but he still chose to fight for the truth. Deliberate means done consciously and intentionally, also, to consider something carefully. Example, jury members discussing Tom Robinson's fate in a dimly lit room, deliberating seriously.